Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please.
Commissioners Brown, Fuller,
Present.
Harris,
Present.
Herr,
Present.
Mercy,
Present.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, Chairman Little.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Pastor Cliff Huffmeyer. Oh, I'm sorry. We don't, that was the minutes from there. I apologize. So, Mr. Fuller, Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Please place your hand over your heart. Repeat with me. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Presentations. Mr. Dorico, is it Tarzana?
Yes, sir.
Tarzana Treatment Center.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Chairman Little and
Morning.
Commissioners. My name is Stephen Updike, and I'm joined by Desiree Tanatongo, my colleague. We're part of the Tarzana Treatment Center Environmental Prevention Team, which one of our program goals is to reduce underage drinking. So we're here today to ask you to support and to partner with us as we try and implement a program in the community, our local Lancaster community, called Merchant Committed. So specifically, we're asking for the City of Lancaster to provide certificates of recognition and a presentation of that certificate to merchants who participate and successfully complete all 3 levels of our program. And we would hope to do that, if that works, at a council or commission meeting with the most exposure for the best public relations with our merchants. So the Merchant Committed program is about becoming a responsible alcohol retailer. And the mission of it is to help support our merchants while preventing sales and access of alcohol to minors. The next page is a list of a code of conduct. I'll talk about a little bit more as level 2 of the program, but it's posting signs, not selling drug paraphernalia, and or placing alcohol by the exits or entrance.
All right, so there's 3 steps to our Merchant Committed program. Once again, my name is Desiree Tanatongo. And the first step is the RBS training. So we have 3 sub-steps for this. The first one would be to confirm that all employees are RBS trained. So RBS is Responsible Beverage Service Training, and that's actually something that we at Tarzana Treatment Centers in our program that we offer for free to any merchants in the Antelope Valley that may need it. So it's just a course that we go through. It's about 3 to 4 hours, just depending on kind of how talkative and our participants are in the class, and it's just a way to try to prevent them from serving alcohol to already intoxicated people or to minors. So the first sub-step of that, like I said, would be confirming all employees are RBS trained. The second step would be to keep a record of all RBS cards. So at the end of our RBS class, we provide them with just a small card saying they're certified, they completed RBS, and it's valid for 3 years. So not only confirming that they're RBS trained, confirming that they're valid, that they're not expired. They come back every 3 years. And then that they also keep record of them, not only at the store, they should have a copy of that at the store in case any kind of enforcement goes in and just to clarify if everyone's RBS trained, but that each merchant or anyone that's selling, furnishing, or serving alcohol keeps it on them as well, preferably in something like their wallet. And then the third sub-step of this would be ensuring that all new hires of every place that sells alcohol are RBS trained, which is the ordinance within the city of Lancaster. That's ordinance number 1015, I believe. And so we're just trying to do these different steps to try to promote, like I said, people from serving alcohol to people that are already intoxicated or to minors. And when it comes to our Merchant Committed program, and actually our first step of RBS training, so we've been doing the Merchant Committed program, going around to some of the different merchants in the city of Lancaster. We haven't gone around to all of them, but we have a couple that are actually interested, and we've been doing this for about a month or so. And we have one that has actually committed to wanting to do this Merchant Committed program. We're calling them our champion. They're going to be the one kicking it off and starting it for us. And hopefully once more merchants see that at least one store has done this, that will kind of incentivize them to follow along as well. And so Stephen's going to go on and explain step 2.
So once they've completed step 1, which is fully trained staff, RBS training, we'll move them into level 2, which then incorporates the code of conduct, which is all the posting of the various signs, the no loitering sign, We ID sign, no open container, the notice to customers, which explains fines and penalties for either selling to underage or buying if you are underage, the cancer and pregnancy warning sign, and the tobacco warning sign. Not all of those are required by the ABC, so we hope to get them to post them all, as well as no drug paraphernalia to be sold in their store and alcohol not placed in the front or exit locations. And that's kind of a encompassing in-house policy, as well as instructing their employees about rules, regulations, and being trained. So then we would ask our retailers to remove all holiday and youth targeted promotions or posters or displays, holiday related, alcohol related, for instance, Cinco de Mayo or St. Patrick's Day, or if anyone remembers the Elvira displays all over for years by beer stacks and whatnot. We'd ask them to take them out. Then we would ask them to comply with the requirement of only a third of their window space being blocked and not visible. So the reason for this, of course, is so they have visibility out through their windows to observe any nuisance activities, drinking on their premises, loitering, shoulder taps, etc. We want to ask them to remove all advertising that's 4 feet and below. That's just because that's about head size or shoulder size of youth. And then, of course, post We ID as well as the other signs.
Right, and then our step 3 of Merchant Committed would be the store makeover. So there's also 3 sub-steps for this as well. The first one would be to remove at least 25% of alcohol ads from the storefront. So that's not just including, like how Stephen was mentioning, the holiday and youth-targeted ads. That's any ads that might even just be like a picture of beer. Try to remove 25% of that they already have existing, 25% of it from the storefront. So that includes, the windows, the front door, the side windows. And then the second sub-step would be to remove 25% of alcohol ads from the inside of the store. So just kind of like how we mentioned before, any kind of ads, it does not have to be targeted or holiday ads, just any ads that are nearby. And then that kind of goes into our third step or sub-step, which is remove alcohol away from any groceries or non-alcoholic beverages, because we don't want alcohol near things that are like youth-related, such as, youth are going to go maybe into a liquor store, these mini-mart stores for things like soda, chips, candy. So we don't want alcohol near there. It just kind of normalizes it for them. Even when they're really young, they see it everywhere. So as they get older, they think, oh, alcohol is normal. It's okay for me to drink, before I'm 21. So we're just trying to prevent that. We're okay with people drinking that are 21 or over, but we really want to try to prevent those that are under 21 from drinking. for brain development and health issues that are associated with that. But not only don't want alcohol near these grocery items, we also don't want them on the way to, let's say, getting that candy or soda. We don't want youth to have to pass by this or have it be by the front of the store, so it's easier for beer runs to happen. And
So we want to really frame this as a win-win-win partnership between responsible community retailers, merchants selling alcohol, and the city of Lancaster, as well as Tarzana Treatment Center. So we are hoping to the recognition from the city, maybe some press regarding it in a recognition ceremony, maybe some social media advertising on the city's social media. In any way we can get this out to the wider community, that there are responsible merchants that have joined in a voluntary program to reduce underage drinking, and they're being rewarded for it and recognized. And we hope to present it to them as even something that can impact their bottom line positively through the goodwill associated. So a couple of small statistics. These are from California Healthy Kids 2017. They're related to Antelope Valley Union High School District, that 23% of freshmen and 31% of juniors reported alcohol and drugs use past 30 days. So, underage drinking is significant, and anything we can do to help address and reduce it, we feel is important.
And so the outcomes that we're looking into having for this program, once these merchants commit them, and hopefully if we have more commit and complete this program, is to diminish the appeal of perception of alcohol among youth in the community. So by doing all of the steps that we talked about, removing some of these ads, lessening some of the ads on the storefront or inside, doing the whole makeover, that'll just kind of diminish the appeal of alcohol to youth. The next one is also improve the layout of the liquor store outlets, like how we said the makeover, and then deter beer runs and our nuisance activities associated with youth and furnishing alcohol to minors. But not only will this help with nuisance activity with minors, it'll help also just with regular people. There won't be as many shoulder taps, consuming on site, panhandling, things like that, if they're just able to complete all these steps and visibly see outside of their store. It'll really help with that, and it'll really help kind of deter reports that maybe someone's stealing alcohol. I know we've actually talked with some merchants, and they say a lot of the times when someone's doing a beer run or stealing something else, they don't often report it because they're not going to go run after them, and unfortunately by the time law enforcement's there, they're long gone. So they say, we don't really report it that often, but it's something we'd like to have them do. Please continue to report. We want to try to get, like a baseline data. That's what we're looking into getting as well, to try to help with, to see what our outcomes are. We want to look for baseline data of how many calls law enforcement gets when it comes to alcohol and youth at these off-sale establishments. So once we get that baseline data, we get these stores to commit, then we're hoping to try to get some more data on, did it really lessen all these calls? Did it really lessen all these nuisances? And so those are some of the outcomes, and I'll let Stephen kind of wrap it up a little more.
So for what's next, really what we're hoping is a response in the near future from the city of Lancaster regarding some kind of partnership in terms of the recognition provided as our merchants achieve, all three of these levels. We feel it's certainly a win-win for the city as a public safety issue and reduction of underage drinking nuisance type calls. But we will await word, and hopefully we can join as partners to address these issues. On the very back, we do have some contact information. There's an email address and a phone number for the point contact on our project, but our office and Mr. Dorico's office also are connected by email, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Any questions?
Yes, I have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
No.
One is the question regarding the RBS training. How many are there currently RBS trained employees out there now, or is this a new?
There are current RBS trained employees. I can probably say that not all of them are trained, even though it is an ordinance in Lancaster. It's just not something. I mean, we've talked to these merchants about RBS train, and some of them didn't even know that it was an ordinance in the Lancaster. So I think there's a lot of them out there that don't know. So we're trying to get out there, let them know like this is an ordinance. Everyone does need to be RBS trained. So we're trying to get as many trained as possible.
Okay. I like the program. One of the things I'm a little concerned about is I always like to look at it from a business owner's point of view. And when you say remove holiday promotions, I just feel that you're actually stopping them from making money with legal adults buying the alcohol. And I'm in favor of keeping away from minors, but at the same time, I have some concerns about restricting their marketing capability.
Yeah.
So we have.
I think, let me add to that, too. I think, too, under the city's guidelines, there's been a lot of on newer units, a lot of things that you have in place here. The city has this with new construction, new sites, new layouts for the stores, can't have floor displays, have to be locked boxes, no window advertising whatsoever, no beer signs, alcohol signs, advertising. So I'm kind of, are you looking to go after the existing ones that have been there for quite some time and say, hey, you have to redesign your whole store? Or are we looking at the existing stores, which the city's put pretty straightforward as far as what they can do and what they can't do? So a lot of these things that you're saying here, I agree with you, and those are conditions that the city has set forth, and it's very strict, on layouts and how it's going to be set up. Nothing can be by checkout centers. Things have to be behind locked doors where they can have automatic locks, lock after hours or certain hours of serving time. So are you looking just for the training that you're looking for, or are you trying to institute all this other stuff, which I get, but a lot of the stuff the city already puts into place as far as newer operations?
So I would say that it's a voluntary program, so we're not
going after anyone.
We're asking the partnership of the business as well. So, for instance, the one retailer who has signed up or committed to the program is at least initially willing to make most of these changes. It's nothing that we would do anything other than try and discuss and move forward with as we go through these levels. So it's an ongoing process, starting with the training of all the employees for the responsible beverage service, which is part of the ordinance. So to get them on board, get them buying into the reduction of alcohol access to youth, start with level 1, discuss level 2 as we move into it, and we are willing to compromise on some issues if there's a difference of agreement. For instance, the retailer we're working with has the front location of his store is on Avenue I, and it's all windows, but it's now blocked about 2/3 of the way up because he was being broken into there. So he put up stacks of supplies and wood lattice, so it's no longer an entrance. And he has 3 cameras outside, so he has visibility through other means. So we felt that was a good working compromise with his issue of the 33% reduction of window space. So we're willing to work with them on displays or whatnot.
But you still can't see into the store.
From that window, you cannot.
So it doesn't fix the problem.
There's cameras.
Well, there's cameras outside observing the nuisance aspects of it.
Yeah, and that's just the side windows. His actual front windows you can see visibly out of, but he has cameras
I
everywhere.
think the city already covered that one, because according to city ordinance, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, what it is
they're not supposed to cover more than 25% of a window.
That's also a requirement from ABC as well.
Yes.
So based on what we went through several years ago, we had a committee on alcohol sales throughout the city. So a lot of things they're talking about already in place in ordinance. Some of those businesses, as Chairman Little's brought forward, have been existed for some time. So as far as the layout of the store, any new things that are coming through now with the planning department or new business, we have that discussion on height of shelves, things that are also preventative from, other issues beyond alcohol. I think the thing is for us is just what makes sense. The focus here is really looking at the businesses that are focusing on that compliance issue as well as the underage drinking. And that's been the discussions we've had, because obviously you can see statistically there's an issue there, okay, that I think is more commonplace than we probably realized. So it's to focus on that and put a campaign out there in a way to recognize businesses that are working together with all of us to resolve those issues. Again, I understand that, from a business standpoint too, you always have to have that consideration on it's a liquor store. If it's a liquor store, they sell alcohol. That's what they do. That's their business. And we don't have any consideration as far as like a restaurant for sales, on-premise sales, where we do have things in place by city ordinance that are required based on percentages of food versus alcohol sales. It's an off-premise sale. So those things is just really primarily to deter that underage aspect of thing or the theft issue. So the window thing's a perfect example, whereas he may well, you could say he compromised on that, but the law dictates that he cannot have that much coverage on the windows. It's as simple as that. And there's a reason for that. It's law enforcement related based on the officers that are out there patrolling to be able to see in that store. It's good for them to have their lights on at night within the interior of the store so law enforcement can see in those windows and things from a preventative standpoint. So there's lots of things that work with that. I think for us is getting back on the horse is making sure that those stores are compliant with the city ordinance as well as all alcohol-related sales throughout the community. And just the responsible beverage service is an important aspect of that.
Absolutely. And, we're aware that a lot of these steps are part of the ordinance, especially for newer ones, but a lot of these stores have been around for a long time. Some have been around for like 20 or 30 years. They're not aware of the new laws, and so I know law enforcement, they have a lot to do, so we just want to try to help a little bit, go out there, make them aware that, these are some of the laws, not only within the city of Lancaster, but within, California with ABC too. So we're just trying to bring awareness to try to prevent, serving to or providing alcohol to intoxicated people or youth. So that's really the point of this. And I understand your concern with the taking away like the holidays promotions, but we've talked to a couple of merchants too, and they don't really have an issue, at least with the conversations that we've had with a couple of them, of taking away those, because they're like, they're going to come in, either I have an ad for Cinco de Mayo or not, and they're going to buy my beer anyway. Like Mr. Liderico mentioned, it's a liquor store. They already know they sell liquor. So they're going to
Is it
anyway.
the intention of your campaign to go out to look at restaurants?
No, this is for off sales only.
Okay, off sales only.
I think it might be worthwhile to separate, though, the mandatory from the voluntary aspects of the program. Because when you're going in to educate, it almost seems as if we would like for you to do this, but it's voluntary. Is the way
the
it
whole
was.
program is voluntary.
Right, but there are many aspects within it that really aren't voluntary at all. They're required by law, either California law, by the ABC, or by Lancaster City Ordinance.
Absolutely.
So, I think that it's important for them to know that. And then I'm a little concerned that if the standards that you present are less than are required, that we're giving a false impression. For example, we want to see 33% of your windows uncovered when the law states it's only up to 25%, or that, you can mitigate it in one way when the law says that you can't. So I wouldn't want to give either one of those impressions. It's that there are aspects that if you don't like the program, it's voluntary, so I'm good. Or if you really can't comply, that's okay too when you're actually in violation of either law or ordinance.
Yeah, I understand your concerns. So when we talked about 33% of the windows, that was from research that we had done in the past according to the ABC's website. So maybe we haven't updated, or maybe we haven't looked at it as recent to see that there was 25, but that was just from our past research. And we are sitting down with all of the merchants, or if we can get them to come in. That's been a little bit of a struggle with some of them, and explaining to them all these steps and explaining what is mandatory under Lancaster ordinance or California law, and then what is absolutely voluntary if they want to join our program.
You know, I don't know you have a check with the ABC, but some are looking at some of those listing things about the ABC. It's already mandatory by ABC, you know, because
Yes, a lot of people are not aware, though.
I'm sorry?
A lot of people are not aware of some of these laws, and so we're
Correct,
just trying
but
to-
it is mandatory. They have to go to class. They have to compliance all that by ABC laws now, you know. Only people who's not compliance right now, whose their license is a grandfather in, but they only got 2 years to compliance, you know.
Just
Go ahead.
kind of along that, yeah, I think it's good as, you know, as part of that education is this is mandatory and not an optional thing. I think helps get that out. The other question I had, so somebody who got this certification would go through it every 3 years?
Yes.
Okay, so on step 3, where it says remove 25% of ads from storefront and inside, would that have to happen each time? So they would be a continual reduction every 3 years of 25%?
We would hope that they would keep it at that same percentage, or even actually lessen it so they have less ads. That's one thing, you know, we want to talk about is, you know, maybe we'll have it only, or have them remove 25% of their ads at least now. But
The first time.
if they're willing to do more, then
Yeah.
absolutely.
I would just suggest maybe more of a percentage of the square foot of the frontage or the inside, because again, if somebody, I mean, a different store may have less, and then they're cutting down more. Another store may have a lot more, and a 25% still leaves a lot. So, I mean, it could cut both ways on that, as opposed to having more of a specific
Sure, the
to everyone.
25% was kind of an initial step to help increase their buy-in that would lead to further discussions for a further reduction. You know, hopefully 50%, maybe a target, maybe more, but 25% was to help increase their buy-in to removing ads at all.
Yeah, and we'd be willing to kind of tweak some of these steps just to make it more appealing for City of Lancaster to want to partner with us too. So if you want like square footage, that could be something that we look more into.
You talk about, under your third point for program outcomes, of establishing baseline data for crimes that are committed, which I think goes towards nuisance activities, and therefore, if it's reduced, you could say that, you know, hopefully there's a correlation between the two. But looking at the first two of your program outcomes, you know, the first being diminishing the appeal and perception of alcohol among youth in the community, and the second to improve the layout of liquor outlets to reflect optimal placement of alcohol. How would you plan on measuring those two impacts, to know if there was any impact at all with the program?
Well, as a reduction of complaints, I suppose, would be the primary measure. For the efficiency of the indoor layout, I'm not sure there would be, right? It would just be essentially no alcohol by the fronts, by the exits, and in places that youth would have to pass by.
So, and the complaints, again, I believe goes towards the third, which is the nuisance activities associated with youth and furnishing alcohol to minors and that placement. But it seems that the voluntary aspects of the program really is aimed at changing hearts and minds, right? Changing kids' behaviors, right?
Yeah, their perception.
And perception, and then, well, the second is, you know, very subjective in terms of improving the layout. You know, I mean, you could actually say it increases alcohol sales if it's better laid out, right? I mean, you could see your sales increase by doing this program, which wouldn't necessarily be the goal of the program. But the first one, if the goal is to diminish the appeal and perception of alcohol, I think it would be important to measure it.
so you know that it worked or didn't work?
So we do have surveys for youth specifically that talks about the perception of alcohol. So we do go around to a lot of different community events that we go to, a lot of health fairs, free events in the community, and we do give out our surveys that talk about the perception of alcohol, how often they maybe have used or they know someone that's used, if some of their family members or friends, if they would care if they have used alcohol or drugs. So we could measure the perception of it that way.
Okay, and you would hope that there would be a correlation between that and then what's done in the liquor stores. Is there some place where, is this program based on a pilot, or that's been someplace that's been successfully implemented, or is this something that you're looking at specific for Lancaster? It would be a pilot here?
So this is something that they actually did in the San Fernando Valley that's been implemented there. I'm trying to remember if they're still currently doing it. Do you remember right now?
I'm not sure if they're currently doing it, but it was implemented under a retail framework program, and I believe it was done for several years. But it was out of this area. It was in the northern San Fernando Valley.
And they were doing retail framework, I believe, for maybe only a couple of years here in Lancaster. I say they as in Tarzana in our program, but this was years before we had started, and it kind of dropped off.
Do you know in San Fernando Valley where they did it, what kind of, it sounds like they stopped. Why? Did they not get the results that they had anticipated, or what happened, or do you know?
I wouldn't say that we are clear on that, but I can tell you from our outreach efforts, it's pretty challenging to gain the buy-in from merchants. They feel, well, first of all, it's challenging to get a hold of the manager. Mm-hmm. Our initial contacts, out of probably 30 contacts, we were moved forward with just a handful of owners or managers that were willing to really even discuss it. So I would think that was probably an ongoing issue wherever it was tried.
So it sounds like then the presidents are having a strong, robust city ordinance, and then enforcing it would be your best bet, because you can't ignore fines and penalties and risking your license. So I would say to Mr. Dorico, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, what it is interesting from the standpoint of the fact that it's really targeting the underage aspect of alcohol issues. So I think for us it's beneficial in many ways that we can see out there as it relates especially to underage drinking, to be able to handle that. It was something I wanted them to bring forward to you as a commission, and then some direction that we can discuss on a level that we were handling several years ago with our local retailers, okay, to get back into that program, because I believe we had some success as far as dealing with issues that related to the business that they brought forward, that were to the nuisance issues related to alcohol establishments. Simply one that we did was payphones. Right, as we went around and addressed the issue just with payphones alone, created a lot of that loitering, education on serving a known alcoholic, okay, a habitual drunkard that's in this section. That's actually a crime. So if you continually have the same individual that's out there panhandling and buying a single sales over and over and over at the same establishment, and you're knowingly selling to them, then that's a no-no. Can't do that. Okay, so things like that had an impact that was positive, that changed some of that behavior at those locations. But again, the real interest for us, I believe, on the public safety side in their program that they're presenting, even though it reaches into those other areas of compliance, the focus is on underage drinking.
Well, to me, it sounds like a really interesting program. I mean, all the parts. I've learned a lot. I have to plead ignorance, and thank you for helping with my education. It also seems like there's a lot of things that are happening right now that are already covered with ordinance and laws, and that even though people have these requirements, they're still not necessarily being met. So at a minimum, having people who are dedicated to going out and educating people about the legal requirements of what they need to do. And I think that, my suggestion would be that it be in that vein, that this isn't, that part of it's not voluntary. If again, I wouldn't be able to go through and mark those off for you, but I think, Mr. Dorico could. But, here's the 4/5 of the stuff you have to do anyway. What we're asking you is to do this last little fifth that's even better. And then you've helped them in understanding their requirements and avoid legal problems and not being ticketed, cited, or closed. And then going that one extra step that then also is going to be helping the community and the youth from not drinking, then to me, it would seem like it would be a very viable program and with the help. Because you don't have, I would assume, the resources of the part of the city, the sheriff's department, to be out doing this, given all the other demands on their time.
That's correct. Based on the activity levels and things that we're dealing with, ultimately, the city's goal is always compliance, not to be punitive. So in a perfect world, that's what we want, is compliance from all the businesses and for those businesses to flourish. So there's that balance, right? And as is always a concern that you regularly identify here from the commission is we don't want to overdo things too as well that are prohibitive for the growth of business and for business well-being. So, but some of those things, like we currently, Captain Weber and his crew represent ABC in our area. I mean, for the alcohol, beverage, and control representatives from the state, they're spread pretty thin. So there's a lot of regulation and things that have to be controlled on a local resource basis, and that will continue.
And maybe that's a perfect way to partner going forward, is by, in our initial contact, bringing awareness to exactly what is already required, and then our voluntary components too as a follow-up.
Any other input? No. I think it's something that we should look at. Yeah, I think it's something that we should. Anything that you can add to with what the city has and to prevent. And I do know the city has put some straightforward rules and regulations together that have worked tremendously. And whether we're going after the older grandfathered establishments like Jen, you had mentioned, are issues. But I think, too, if we have facilities out there that aren't in compliance with what the things are now, they should be redressed. Yeah.
We agree.
Okay. Should we make a Lee, to look at this forward?
I can take it on advisement. I'll meet further with them as far as this program, and then we'll come back with a discussion about how we plan to implement that and focus on that.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Kathleen, any speaker cards at all? Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of June 12th?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 12th, 2019.
We have a motion from Mr. Fuller.
Second.
Second from Mr. Harris. All vote, please. 5-0. Moving forward. Hey, how are you?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Happy summer. We got like triple-digit heat happening this weekend, so make sure you hydrate.
Is that happy? The triple digits?
Yes, triple digits. We're going to start with our Crime Commission report for May stats. For our burglaries, we had a total of 65 in the month of May. We had 34 residential and 31 commercial. For robberies, we had 34 total robberies, 10 armed, 24 strong-armed. Sorry. And for our crime prevention for the month of May, we, via our social media, we put our public announcements. We've done our neighborhood watches with our Landcap team and Business Before Breakfast. For our community engagement, we had our coffee with the deputy at Crazy Autos, and it was the month of May was Mental Health Awareness Month. So that's one of our deputies that works the MENT team out here in the North Patrol Division. We had our homeschool students come to our station and do a tour of our station. That day they had a special treat. Our sheriff actually flew into town for Law Day, and the kids were able to meet the sheriff, so they were pretty excited. We had our Community Academy class 40. It was in Spanish. This is a picture of the graduation. Our Academy class goes about 8 weeks, and it's one Tuesday a month. And so they learn our policies and procedures and what we do as our department as a whole. And everything was done in Spanish, including the instructors and some of the PowerPoints. So the scenarios were also done in Spanish and were done at the fairgrounds. We actually held our Community Academy class at Penny Lane with Mr. Eric. He allowed us to use his facility there. We had our deputies go to our elementary school for Career Day. They spoke about what they do. The kids were asked the deputies questions, as why they became deputies and what we do out there. And our last slide here is we did our torch run with our Law Enforcement Special Olympics torch run. And this weekend, actually, we're going to be doing our Tip-A-Cop for our Special Olympics at Crazy Autos. It'll be this Saturday from 8 to 12. So we hope you can join us there this Saturday. We're trying to raise our funds for our athletes there. Last year, I think we raised close to $3,000. So we're trying to raise a little more money this year. And we're going to go to our next presentation for our CompStat stats. For our homicides, we had 2 in the month of May. Our rapes, we had 7 reported rapes, with 34 robberies. For our aggravated assaults, we had 80. For our domestic violence, we had 16. For our burglaries, 65. Our grand thefts are at about 70. And our arsons are down to, we had 0 arsons in the month of May. Wait, I think I missed one. Hold on. Our grand theft autos, going back to our grand theft autos, we had 70. Any questions on those?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Just looking at burglaries, first of all, they're up May versus April, but the 12-month trend I can see is decreasing, which is encouraging. But I'm wondering if we could address robberies, because it seems that the 12-month trend is up, and then strong arm robberies seems to be substantially up.
We talked about this last month a little bit. The robberies are really, the jump in robberies are being driven by shoplift robberies. If you walk in and steal a candy bar and walk out, it's a petty theft. If you walk in and grab that same candy bar and a clerk tries to stop you and there's a struggle and you run out, that turns it into what's called an Estes robbery. And that's what's really driving our numbers. This year...
Is that same as strong arm? Because I don't understand the difference. Because strong arm,
a strong arm just means a weapon's not involved. You could, you come up and, literally beat the tar out of someone and steal their stuff. That's a strong arm. You come in, you threaten someone. There's no there's no weapon used. You threaten them. It's a strong arm. But this Estes deals specifically. It's a court case. It's a case law. It deals specifically with shoplifting. It turns into robbery due to a struggle. And that's primarily what's driving our numbers. Our armed robberies for the month are down significantly, almost half. So we've been working with our retailers, looking to see do we have any retailers that have security that is maybe being a little too aggressive or jumping into stuff, and working with them just really to educate them on the liability and the risk you take when you start physically assaulting people. But if you look at our overall larceny numbers, they're down. Burglaries are like down 30%, trending down. But robberies, that's what we're seeing, and it's partly education and partly looking at it from a SEPTED standpoint. Is there anything we can work with these retailers with to help them with their environmental design that can make them a less potential target of a shoplift, which now turns into robbery when they interject themselves. If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense and extremely helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I mean,
And
if
then,
you're going to look for something to go down, I guess I'd
Yes.
prefer the armed robbery going down than the strong.
Well, I want them all down, but
Sure.
we're concentrating. That's one of our big targets is robberies. We had an issue with larcenies all last year that we have worked to turn that trend. We're maintaining that, and now we have seen that trend, and we are working to bring those numbers down even more. But if you look at the Part 1 numbers overall, our Part 1 crime rate in May was just over 4.2, down just over 4.2%. We're continuing that downward trend. Today I pulled the numbers, the preliminary numbers as of this morning. We're down a little over 6%. So we're still trending in the right direction. And our Estes robberies for the month of June, the numbers that we have so far, were down from the month of May. May was our highest month of the year, and surprisingly, May was the highest month of the year to date as of last year. It wasn't as high as it was this year, but May last year was a big for those Estes robberies. But we've recognized it, and we're doing what we can to bring those numbers down.
Well, the problem is when you got everything decreasing like that, then a statistic pops out.
Sooner or later,
that really
victim of
explains
your own
it. So
success.
that's really great.
But we're seeing that. It's you could talk all the different laws that have changed that drive that train, and we've all discussed them before. But we can't. We have to do what we can do to address that, and we are. Another number that came up was the homicide rate. It showed 2 last month. One of those was a homeowner that shot a burglar, so that will ultimately come off. It goes on as a stat originally once the homicide investigates it, and the DA says, no, this isn't a crime. That number will drop. And the second one was actually a suspicious incident, a suspicious death from last year that they got some information on that turned it into a stat in May, but it wasn't an incident that occurred in May. So that's a little deceiving for that number.
Well, thank you for the explanation.
Sure.
Thank you. We're going to go on to our final report for LEAPS. For during the month of May, LEAPS was dispatched 48 times, totaling 8.7 hours, and was airborne, providing strategic surveillance for 308.9 hours. LEAPS provided airborne observation support in the arrest of 12 suspects. LEAPS aided in the recovery of 2 stolen vehicles and a street racing call. LEAPS helped with 12 arrests, 5 fights and assaults, 11 burglary and robbery, 3 traffic stops, 16 offense suspicious circumstances, and 1 person with a gun. The next slide. Oh, that would be me with the remote. Sorry. The next page, you're going to see 36%, 25 property, 20% arrest and detentions, and 7% vehicles, 30% observations. Any questions for LEAPS? And I forgot to introduce Deputy Green is going to be part of our community relations unit, so he's going to be my helper. I'm glad to have him because we're busy back there, so you'll see him or myself here. So thank you.
Welcome, Deputy. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And also, real quick, we have some of you met him at the boosters meeting earlier, but did Lieutenant Bergen have to step out?
I'm behind you.
Oh, he's by me. Lieutenant Bergen, he is our new operations lieutenant at the station, which basically makes him the second in command and running the day-to-day operation. So he's with us now.
Welcome, Lieutenant. Thank you, sir. Any questions? No? Probation Department.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Pretty successful month, I think, as we get into the warmer months, as the sheriff will explain to you, the sheriff's department. Some things, crimes seem to increase a little bit with the daylight hours. However, we've been fortunate. We had no flashes last week where we had nobody taken into custody for arriving with some issues and things for the month of June. We had our numbers right now, and again, this is spread across the Antelope Valley, are just for AB 109 specific. I'm still trying to work on getting the director to give us some jewel numbers, who's a separate director, and adult numbers from the courthouse, so maybe we can combine them and give a full story versus just a limited one with AB 109. Again, AB 109 is probably the most complicated probationer that we service, probably arguably in the country, being out with LA County. We have roughly about 430 cases right now locally. Out of that, we're averaging about 1.5 visits per month inside the office and 1 visit per month outside the office. And they range anywhere from domestic violence cases, family violence, to ultra high, which their criminal history is excessive. And even though they're eligible through the state's policy, we don't always agree with that. Sometimes we just shake our head, but we still monitor them quite successfully, I believe. We had 18 violations, which went to court, that were arrested, detained, and went to court. And the revocations are a little bit different than a flash. A flash is just, hey, we're going to get you off the streets, take you off, and put you into custody for 10 days, get your attention, and hopefully you'll bounce back and get back in line. Where a violation is, you're going to go through the whole process, where you may spend a minimum of 30 days to 180 days in custody with a violation. And that's without a new charge. That's just a violation of that you're not maintaining the program that you were given through the courts. We had 22 warrants issued. We had, it looks like 14 referrals through to our co-locating agencies as far as drug treatment, residential, whether it be Acton, Tarzana treatment, and so on. Those were 14 that were accepted. We may have had 20 referrals or suggestions that we think they may need services, and the 14 were accepted. And that we have a couple really good things. We have LA County Child Support Services is hoping to come into our office as a co-locator. Many times people don't pay their child support, especially with criminal records, because they think they're automatically going right back to jail, and they want to help us assist them to help start paying their child support without the fear of going back to jail, and working out some kind of way they can understand the law better as they change. So that's something that's working with us now with probation, that maybe they'll come up and spend 1 or 2 days a week in our office to offer these services. We've already have the financial evaluators come into our office 1 day a week, where we have victim restitution, and they can monitor it. They can assist with making payment arrangements. So if they can't make, if they have a $500 restitution order, say, and they can't make the $100 a month, they may give them $25 to $35, depending on their income and what they need and stuff. So they work with them and try to come with a payment plan that will be sufficient. So some is better than nothing, is what I'm trying to say. So that's why we have our financial evaluator. LA County Office of Education is considering a program with us, in a pilot program, where they'll come up and they're seeking teachers right now to teach courses to help people not only get their GED, but to also educate them in other fields of interest. Could be computer technology and things of that nature. So there's some things that are going. Goodwill Industries, along with Health Right 360, just hired 10 of our probationers through there. And the program basically is, for the way I understand it, is that the first 300 hours will be paid by Goodwill Industry, and then the people that the employer will have the option of picking them up from that point. Health Right 360 provides things with our auxiliary funds, which will allow us, if they required some type of uniforms or particular type of shoes or gloves or any type of safety equipment, that we would assist them once they were hired permanently and things of that nature. In fact, I'll give you a quick story. I had a guy come into my office that, unfortunately, it was our misfortune that he lost his job, that he struggled to get. So he comes in my office, and of course, he's giving me a hard time, saying what he says. And unfortunately, it's not against the law to get under my skin or attack my ego. But so we didn't arrest him, even though he kind of had a little attitude problem. But we convinced him that if he could find one job, he could find another, and he did. And so he found out his own job on his own way, and we were able to assist him by getting him some jeans and some long sleeve shirts for his job. And he's been there for 2 months, and he's been real successful. So that's what we're trying to accomplish versus, hey, go back to jail and sit in the cell. So we're trying to do that. So that's the way the state has built the policies within the law, and we're hoping that we're able to achieve that. So that's what I have for you guys today.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
When you mentioned you had one office visit and one outside visit, how often does someone on probation have to meet with you?
It depends on what their risk score is. We have, the average is 1 and 1. So 1 in office per month and 1 outside the office. Obviously, with our transient and homeless community, we're going to try to meet them at locations near their encampments and stuff like that. We try to keep them. Unfortunately, we don't. The only thing we have on GPS at the moment are sex offenders. So we're not allowed to put our transient and homeless people on GPS monitors. So it's hard. So we do 1 field visit for the average and 1 in office. With our flexibility, though, however, if you're showing signs of decreased effort, then we can actually increase it to up to once a week, sometimes twice a week. We have the discretion to do such. Obviously, with our more ultra high, as we refer to them as clients, we're going to see them 3 or 4 times a month, just to keep the leash a little bit shorter, because their history has proven that if they're not monitored very closely, they have a tendency to recommit, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Thank you.
Sir.
Out of the 430 cases, how many are in violation of those right now that aren't reporting whatsoever out there?
I would estimate, just off the top of my head, probably 12 to 15%. I think it's a low number in comparison. And again, the absconders, they're just historically that. And one of the issues we have, even internally with AB 109, is that the maximum we can give them is 180 days. So if a guy who, or probationer, male or female, has a history of absconding or just not showing up, they know the most extreme they're going to get is 180 days under that program, unless they commit a new crime and the DA files that crime. If it's a fileable crime, a felony crime, then that's a little different. Then it becomes a new crime, and then we can either leave this one open or shut it, depending on what the outcome of that crime is. But it's frustrating. You know, you almost know the same ones that aren't going to come. You know, they're going to get out of jail. They're going to get out of prison. We're going to get a notice that they're here to report within 48 hours, and it's almost a given that they won't show. There's a small percentage of those people, but they're still there, and they know. You know, and it's just the way they decide to live their life, I guess, if we will.
And I know I've asked this before, and I think some of the violations you said 14 drug violations, are those, a lot of these parolees that are coming out, they've never been tested for drugs coming out, have they?
Well, that's the frustrating part as well.
That's the frustrating part.
Like 30% of the people that arrive within 48 hours test positive.
Yeah.
And we can't just turn them right around and send them back to jail. What we have to do is we give them a written sanction, say, pretty much don't do it again, because this is the beginning of your downfall.
So they know the system, they know.
Absolutely.
And 180 days to them is a walk in the park?
Pretty much, I guess. And I think the only ones that are sex offenders are the ones that that's where the shortest opportunity to violate is at, because if they come out and they refuse housing, if they don't have a place to live and if they refuse their housing, they're going right back to jail that day. We can't allow them to wander the streets unsupervised, just being randomly out with an ankle bracelet and just going wherever they want. So in order to protect the community, in that aspect, in that particular one, with the GPS monitoring, they're going to go right back to jail. No questions. So they have a choice to find a place to live that's suitable without children, if that's the case. Well, they're going to go to one of our residents. And unfortunately, we don't have one up here, so they're going to go to the downtown LA area. There's a few places down there that will accept and are designated for those areas and those type of crimes.
In the event they are sent back for a violation for 180 days, is there a chance of early release for that, or is that mandatory to do the full time for the violation?
The early release, you have to have 6 months of non-custodial time. In other words, no violations whatsoever. So the early release is mandated by state. It's a state law saying if you qualify, if you do your thing. The one few areas that we can't honor the 6 month is when you have a family violence and you have a 52-week domestic violence requirement by law of counseling. So that's usually built into the penal code, where you have 52 weeks of domestic violence courses that you must take and successfully make. So obviously 52 weeks is not going to allow you to finish in 6 months.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Highway Patrol.
Morning, Chairman and Commissioners.
Morning.
Sergeant Charles Murray from the Antelope Valley CHP office. The statistics I'm going to provide are for the second quarter, which runs from April through June. In that quarter, we had a total of 208 DUI arrests. 202 of those were alcohol only. 2 were for a combination of alcohol and drugs, and 4 were for drugs or marijuana only. In the second quarter, we had a total of 7 fatality collisions, and for the year total, that makes 14. So we had 7 in the first quarter and 7 in the second quarter. We investigated 204 injury traffic collisions, 254 property damage only traffic collisions, 43 of which, between the two, were DUI related. Any questions on that?
Any questions, Commissioners?
How's the enforcement going on the cannabis-related DUI, and in terms of identifying and getting what you need for conviction?
It's hard to track the cannabis only as far as enforcement goes. The only time we encounter those are when they're impaired enough that they're taken into custody. And as I stated, we had 4 marijuana DUI arrests out of the 208 total DUI arrests. I think it's too early really to say if there's an upswing in the trend of driving while under the influence. We just, we have to have some sort of impairment, or show signs that the driving is impaired. And then we are challenged also with the fact that there's no presumptive limits for the marijuana. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, sir. Everything you do. Thank you. District Attorney, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, just some statistics. We filed 115 felonies the month of June, 271 misdemeanors. That's pretty much average for what we've been doing for the last couple years. The only additional item that I have is I did meet with some detectives from the narcotics unit earlier this week, and apparently there's been an issue with the legalization of marijuana with marijuana grows that have been springing up. They're apparently relatively common, and I think the belief within the community is that it's legal to grow marijuana as much as you want, wherever you want, and it's generally a 6-plant minimum. So I had one earlier this week with 4,000 plants, so slightly more than the 6 limit, and apparently it's prevalent. So there's a couple detectives that are going to be going around, I think, targeting. So one of the issues we're dealing with right now is trying to figure out exactly what to file. There's chemicals everywhere. They're apparently taking water from illegally taking water to use to grow the marijuana. So we're looking at some water board standards that might help us prosecute these cases as felonies. We're also looking at some environmental laws that make the use of chemicals and the manner that they're being used illegal. But it looks to me like it might be a problem. It's just something that just came to my attention this week. So hopefully, maybe in the next month or two, we'll have a little bit more information on what exactly is going on with this. But apparently, there's a lot of them out there, and Antelope Valley has a lot of open space. And so these are starting to become a problem, and apparently the Board of Supervisors has allocated some money to a couple of these detectives to investigate these crimes. So I'm working with them, and I've got a DA assigned to work with them and hopefully do something about it. So there you go.
A lot of them think it's legal just because they can grow that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's what the detectives were telling me. I think there's a perception that, I mean, it is legal, but they're only to a certain level, but the problem is that it's only a misdemeanor. You can have 100 pounds, and it's a misdemeanor. So we're looking at that. Doesn't really help us much in terms of control of the problem because that's not much of a deterrent.
Right.
So we're looking at possible felony charges, conspiracy, and some other laws that they might be violating, particularly when it comes to use of the chemicals. They go into the groundwater. That's not good. So.
Is that something that LEAPS is able to help identify in terms of, to grow that large?
Yeah, from the IR system at night, yeah, like we used to use the handheld flares and things back in my days at Narco. But I would say for the other things is there's state laws that required based on the disposal of those wastewater and chemicals and things that are significantly fine heavy that have come out and with the graded cannabis grows. So that's maybe something I can get together with you and Jocelyn. I can with the folks that we've been working with on our legalized grow locations and maybe give you some information that might be helpful that way.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Lee.
How are you, sir?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good. Jocelyn's not available today, but I'm just going to, in the interest of time, because I know a number of us need to get over to the State of the City address at the Hellenic Center, so I'm going to have Tracy come up and talk about National Night Out.
Good morning, Commissioner Little.
Good morning.
And Commissioners.
Oh, hold on, Tracy, just one thing, though. You got the flyer there?
Yes.
We've made Gil a celebrity once again.
We see that.
He's awesome, by the way. It's unfortunate he's not here, so we could tout him.
I was going to say, how many takes?
He's outstanding. He did that in one take.
One take?
One take.
One take.
That was taken at our national event, our National Night Out event, I believe 3 years ago when we had it on Fig Avenue. So our 9th annual National Night Out event will take place on Thursday, August 1st from 4 to 8 p.m. on Ehrlich Avenue, just right next to the MOA Museum. We have currently 25 vendors participating. We have California Highway Patrol, Lancaster Sheriff Station, Animal Control, Spiral Technology, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Ready Lancaster. We have a ton more. But it's a completely free event. I'd like to invite everyone here in the community to come out and celebrate that 4-hour event with us and just have a good time. There will be a band on the bandstand stage at 6 p.m. We also have the farmers market that night, so it should be a really good event, and I invite everyone to come out and enjoy it with us.
Awesome. Sounds like a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sounds like a great evening. Vanessa?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, state-wise, SB 58, which is Senator Wiener, he has a bill that would allow, it's the bar bill, allowing 10 cities in California to sell alcohol until 4 a.m. 3 of the 10 cities are located in LA County. They're in Los Angeles, West Hollywood, and Long Beach. This increases the chances of DUI, especially among AV residents who choose to spend the night drinking in LA. Governor Brown actually vetoed the bill last year. He said, "I believe we have enough mischief from midnight to 2 without adding 2 more hours of mayhem." Assemblyman Lackey is strongly opposed to this bill. He dealt with DUIs when he was a CHP officer. In fact, he had an op-ed in the AV press this last weekend about it. So it will be voted on in the Assembly Government Organization Committee today. So also SB 132, also Wiener. This is the gender identity bill. It allows CDCR inmates to be housed in a correctional facility that is consistent with their gender identity. This identity is without a diagnosis from a gender dysphoria, so it's not, they have no diagnosis. So Assemblyman Lackey feels that this will be abused without getting into details. I don't know how to. This exposes female inmates who will now be forced to interact with biological males with male parts, so to speak, that are still present, even if they were convicted for violent sex crimes such as rape. So it's currently in Assembly portions. Also, SB 360, which is Senator Hill. It's the clergy mandated reporters. In our office, we got over 1,800 letters from the Catholic Church. This makes priests and other clergy members mandated reporters, must report sexual abuse confessions to law enforcement. The Assembly Public Safety Chair offered hostile amendments, stripping the bill to just defining it as penitential confessions, but it was rejected by the author. So the rumor is that Senator Hill will either take up the bill and let it die in committee or make it a 2-year bill. I'm trying to think of what I know we're in a crunch time. So just one more thing. Rumor has it that there's maybe a possible collapse of AB 392, SB 230, which is the lethal weapon bill, because some of the supporters of AB 392 are not holding their end of the bargain. So this is developing as we speak, so I'll let you know more about that next month. Couple of local things. Assemblyman Lackey will be out of session as of tomorrow. They'll be home for 4 weeks. On Thursday, the 25th of July, we are honoring his business of the month, which is Dairy Express in Lancaster. They're great community partners. They give to homeless organizations. They give food. They've been in business for a very, very long time. They also sponsor several sports teams, kids sports teams. So that will be, I sent the city an invite, so hopefully someone will come from the city. Also, we're having on Tuesday, July 23rd, a self-defense workshop at AVPH, and that's from 6 to 8, and we're partnering with AVPH and Acton Karate and the Antelope Valley Hospital, as well as some other organizations for women. And that's it. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Drew, anything?
Yeah, I kind of little double duty here on behalf of Senator Scott Wilk's office. I think Vanessa covered all the legislation very well. We're monitoring all of those as well and share those concerns. One thing I'd like to do is just offer any assistance. I really like this idea, Lee, that you spoke of. I mean, I think the especially in terms of wastewater, environmental regulations. It almost reminds me of like the getting Al Capone on taxes. A lot of those have very severe penalties that could help with that. So if there's anything we can do in terms of helping identify proper state agencies to combat those illegal grows or anything else along those lines, please let us know.
Any other things? We have no speaker cards. Any commissioner comments? Then we'll stand adjourned until Wednesday, August 14th at 10 a.m.